Welcome back everyone to this second video about the Impact Life Log. In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at the life log that I created last week, and we're going to look at the actions that I tracked, see how I've done for all the different action points, and then look at some of the indicators and targets that I want to set for week 2. So if you'll recall, last week I created that life log on a big piece of cardboard, which is right here. And for the life log, I used the triple P thinking, right? So I looked at people impact, planetary impact, and prosperity. So for people or for social impact, I looked at 2 indicators. For environmental impact, I looked at 2 indicators. And for prosperity, I also looked at 2 indicators. So we're going to look at those in a bit more detail and see how I want to move on to week 2 and week 3. All right, so the first indicator that I looked at was to help someone. So I had to track how often I help someone in a week. Now, I jotted down 3 moments where I helped someone. The first one was where I invited a bit more of an elderly neighbor over for dinner. The second one is where I made a call to someone who I knew was struggling a little bit with isolation during COVID. And the third one was where I made a meal for someone who had lost their mom. I felt like those were all moments where I consciously tried to help someone. So in total, I helped someone 3 times last week. That's how I've defined it for the log. Now, one thing that I've really noticed with this particular action is that I need to be more clear on what I mean by helping someone. So for week 2, I want to double this number. So I want to double it to 6, but I also want to do a little bit of research on what I mean by helping someone. So maybe there's a more structured, a more formal way that I could help someone, or maybe I actually want to do some of these activities more regularly, like for example, invite someone out of the neighborhood who I know is a bit lonely for dinner once a week, or to actually call up a few people that are struggling with COVID a few times a week, right? So in week 2, I want to double this number 3 to 6 by doing similar actions, and I'm going to track that again. Donate and give money. This is very interesting actually, because me and my wife already put away 10% of our income with the intent of donating or giving that money or helping someone out. But what I realized during this week is that although we do put that 10% aside, we don't use it. It just sits in the bank mostly. And yeah, now and then throughout the year, we're able to use it, but a lot of it actually sits in our bank account. And I realized that in week 1, there was only one moment where I donated money, and that was just 10 euros. So this made me very conscious of that. And what I want to do in week 2 is I want to find 2 or 3 small structural ways in which I can give part of that 10% that we're saving to help others, that I can give that away in a much more structured way. So I want to turn this 10 euros into 100 for week 2. And I want to do that by identifying charities that I want to donate to. I already did a little bit of a deep dive, and there's actually an organization that ranks charities, because I struggle a little bit with giving to charities because I always wonder where the money goes. So there's an NGO that actually recommends 8 charities in the world that are most effective in helping people in general, regardless of race or where you live or anything. So I'm going to look at that site. It's called givewell.com, and I'm going to give part of our money to that site. So that way I can increase my weekly donation already by just having it regularly go out. Another thing I want to do is on a weekly basis give some money to some people that I know in Bangladesh to help them out. So I want to do that on a weekly basis rather than right now at an ad hoc basis. So those are the 2 social impact goals. And the main things that I've really learned there is that I spend way too little of the money that we put aside for donating. So I want to spend more of that, and that I could really help people in a more structured way. So these are really good insights, right, that I could use in the weeks to come. The next one was the environmental impact of my daily actions. So for the environmental impact, I looked at 2 action points: my water consumption and packaging. For water consumption, what I decided to do was I realized that it was too much in 1 week to track all forms of water consumption throughout the house. I found it too overwhelming to do that in one go. So I decided to focus on 2 things. 1, how long I shower and how much water that produces, and 2, how much water we use in the hot water kettle. And there's a reason why I chose that second one, which I'll explain in a minute. If we look at the shower, so what you'll see is for week 1, I've actually broken down this square into two squares so that I could track 2 items for this particular action point. So you might want to do something like that as well for your action points. But for the shower, on average, I shower for about 12 minutes. So on Monday, I showered for 7 minutes, so I must have been in a rush. And after that, it goes up. It goes from 12 to 15 to 12 to 15 to 10 to 12 minutes. Overall, I looked this up online, and there's actually a website that just told me that per minute you, on average, consume about 8 liters of water in a shower. So I just timed that times the number of minutes that I showered for that week, and I came to a figure of 658 liters for that week of showering. And on average, I spend about 12 minutes in the shower. So I thought, okay, how could I reduce that? It's pretty simple. So what I'm going to try to do for next week is I'm going to set a target for myself to try to shower within 7 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer, shower within 7 minutes, and get out. And that should just almost close to half my numbers, right? And I'll see how that goes, and then I can always set a new target for the week 3. The second one that I measured was the hot water kettle. So the reason I measured this is we have a baby right now, and we have to use a lot of hot water bottles at the moment to heat up her bed. She was born a little bit small, so we have to take extra care of her. But I noticed that we were heating this bottle up 10 times a day or something. So I really wanted to track how much water we actually boil because of that process. And I quickly realized it was a decent amount actually, because on day 1 we used 6 liters of water that we boiled for that process. Day 2, 8, day 3, 10, day 4, 6, and it continues to 12, 6, and 5. So overall, we used 54 liters of water to heat up a bed. And this is kind of stupid because we actually also have electric hot water bottles that we could just heat up with the plug. But it's just a matter of being a little lazy and also realizing that we have way too many products in the house. So this is also a bit of where you realize how materialistic you are in some ways. So what I'm going to do here is I'm still going to use the hot water bottles because they really heat up the bed really well. But we don't need 2 hot water bottles. We can do 1 hot water bottle and 1 electric hot water bottle. It's good to remember that if I'm replacing one source of energy with another, that I would have to measure that too, right? Maybe that's something that I'll look into in week 3. So I'm going to try to have these numbers, right? So right now it's 54. I'll aim for somewhere between 25 and 30. So that's for my water consumption. So if I do that, then on these 2 fronts, I'll be able to reduce our water consumption by 50% almost, which is pretty good, right? And I don't think it really affects our lives very much. So what's the big deal? Next, let's look at packaging. So for packaging, I tracked 2 things. I tracked how much cardboard and paper waste we have per week and how much plastic waste we have per week. Now, the reason that there's no actual number in these is because what I did is I just dumped it all into a spot in the kitchen. And then at the end of the week, I weighed how much that was, how much plastic we had produced and how much packaging we had produced. And it came to this figure. So I actually weighed it on our weighing scale. Roughly with regard to plastic, we consumed about 0.5 kgs of plastic last week. And cardboard and paper, we consumed about 2 kgs. Now, for the cardboard and paper, I struggle what to do with that, because right now we're ordering a lot of stuff online because we're not leaving the house as much because of COVID. So how do we reduce that? Because when you shop online, you produce a lot of paper. Now, paper is also not the worst thing. It can be recycled, and we recycle it. But there's also ink in that paper. I realized when I did a little deep dive on the internet, there's a lot of plastic hidden within that paper. And I also realized that some of the bigger multinationals that I buy my products from, they actually make it really hard for smaller businesses locally to survive, especially in these times. So I've decided that even though we're doing some social distancing because of COVID, I'm gonna try to start buying a little bit more locally to reduce this amount, so that to reduce the amount of paper consumption and cardboard that comes into the house. I mean, this, for example, is a piece of cardboard that came from Amazon, right? So maybe I can reduce that by shopping a little bit more on the high street outside. Plastic was 0.5 kgs. And the main thing that I noticed was with plastic was that a lot of our food items were packaged in plastic. Now, when me and my wife looked online, we realized that in the supermarket, there's actually plenty of options that have a little bit less plastic. Either the products are in glass or the products are not packaged and they're fresh. So we're gonna try to consciously replace our food items to buy more food items that have less plastic. And then I'm gonna see how that affects this 0.5. So I'm not gonna set a target for this 0.5 because I don't know what a difference that will make. But instead, I'm gonna change the types of products we buy and see how that affects that 0.5. Next, we have prosperity. So for prosperity, I wanted to track some things that affect my well-being, right? So the two things that I was tracking were work-life balance and exercise. For work-life balance, I quickly realized that what I had to do to measure my work-life balance was to break it down. And I broke it down into 4 sub-actions, let's say. The first one was how much do I work? The second was what do I do in my downtime? The third one was how much family time do I spend? And the fourth one was how much time do I spend cleaning in the house? Now, I learned that I overwork. So, for example, on Monday I worked 14 hours, which is actually ridiculous. After that I worked 10, 10, 9, 6, 0, and 12 hours. So I actually worked 6 out of 7 days, which is also a little bit crazy. And overall I worked 61 hours. I need to reduce that somehow. And what I realized is, yes, I do have quite a bit of work to do, but I could be working more effectively. So I started thinking of how I work, and I do definitely waste some time on like minor tasks that are not necessary, or working on some tasks too slowly and not prioritizing others. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to read a little bit of literature about time management and how I can improve that. I'm also going to use the Pomodoro technique a bit more effectively to time myself while working. And I'm going to try to reduce this amount to 50 work hours for next week. So I know that's still a little bit high, but I feel like this has to be gradually broken down. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I also realized that for my downtime, it was mainly Netflix. So I wrote Netflix, and it was roughly 2 hours a day. So like a little series here, a little show there. And I find that a real waste of time. So what I'm gonna set myself as a goal is that next week, I can only watch 1 movie and 2 episodes of something, which comes down to approximately 3 hours of consumption instead of 4 hours of consumption. So 3 hours of consumption would mean that suddenly I have to find different ways of having downtime, which I think is probably really healthy for me, not to be glued to a screen during my downtime while I'm also glued to a screen during my work time. So my challenge for next week is to find different ways of finding downtime, maybe something off a screen. The next one was family time. Now, we have a new kid, a new baby girl, and because of work mainly, and because of, we need to sleep and we need some downtime, I've been spending way too much time on family time, or way too little time on family time, sorry. So I see like 2 hours on Monday, 1 hour on Tuesday, then 4 hours, 1 hour, 1 hour, and then on at the end of the week on Saturday I actually took a day off, so I put that as 100%, which was on family time, and then 2 hours again. But I would like to up these numbers a little bit on the daily basis, so that I'm spending roughly 3 hours a day on family time, and that I maintain 1 day of just like a full family day. So I want to up this. So let's say I spend now roughly 10% of my time on family time. I want to up that to about 20 to 30% of my time. So we'll see. I'll track that, but I want to consciously do that. So what I've decided to do is that in the evenings after dinner, that I don't start working again, that I actually spend some time with the family consciously and try to up those numbers and see where I get. The final one is cleaning. The reason I wrote cleaning down is because I realized that between work and after work, I'd spend a lot of time cleaning. And maybe this was, maybe I was doing this because I felt like I needed to contribute to, the baby being born, etc. But it was also cutting into my downtime and my family time a lot. Because on average, I was cleaning like 2 to 3 hours a day. And some of that stuff is not necessary. Like some of that stuff could be done much quicker, or it could be brought together so that we do a few things in bulk. So I'm gonna try to reduce these numbers. My wife might not be happy with that in the beginning while we tried to figure out how to do that. But right now I have 21 hours per week. I'm gonna try to reduce that to almost half. I want to reduce it to 10 hours if possible, and just clean more efficiently so that I have time for more downtime and family time and socializing. So I want to reduce that by half. The final action was exercise. Now, it's almost shocking, but I only went running 1 time. So that's all I did in terms of exercise, in terms of conscious exercise. Yeah, sure, I went for a walk here or there, but like a real exercise session was just 1 time. And the reason, I was quite conscious of this one, like I thought about it throughout the week, and I realized the reason for this was that I would prioritize work or sleep or even downtime, to be honest, for this. And looking back at downtime, downtime was also quite unhealthy because I'd be sitting watching a movie or something and then having a snack. So maybe I could replace some of that downtime with more physical exercise or going outside, etc. So I want to up this 1 session to at least 3 for next week. So I want to turn that into a 3. Now at the bottom of my log over here, I wrote down some reflection points over here as well. Some things that, during the week stood out for me and that I want to kind of remember and reflect on in this video as well. So here's the main things that I learned. One was that by tracking these items, it actually makes you much more conscious of your day and how you're using your time, which I think is really valuable, because it's no longer that you're just kind of coasting through the day. You're actually thinking about the actions that you're doing more and more and more, and you're starting to identify new things as well, which is my second point. So for example, because I was looking at packaging a lot, I realized that there was also a lot of different types of plastic in the packaging we were using, and it made me want to research that. I also realized that we use tons of diapers and wipes for the baby, and I started to research if we could do this in a different way. So me and my wife are now looking at other things as well, not just the things we were tracking. So that's really interesting. So what that does is that tracking one action will lead to you wanting to uncover information about a totally different action as well. Another thing that I realized is that the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are actually really close to home. And being more sustainable can really start with you even in your home, right? It doesn't have to be as an entrepreneur yet. There's so many things you can do in your day-to-day life to try to find a better balance between people, planet, and profit, or people, planet, and prosperity. And it's actually a really good place to start because it has a trickle-on effect. For example, during this week, I also realized and identified a lot of cool business opportunities here. So for example, with packaging, I thought, oh wow, there's actually room to come up with more packageless supermarket concepts. I know there are some, but they're not very easy to find and they're not in all the neighborhoods. So maybe like a packageless delivery system for food would be very interesting. So you also start to realize business opportunities through some of these activities. And I guess the final thing that I realized is that cutting down on some of these actions is actually really worth it, but it's also good to research what the impact of that is. So something that I need to do a little bit more is look at, okay, if I cut down my water consumption by 50%, what is the actual value of that, right? Outside of my household, like what's the change that I'm bringing about? Because if I become more conscious of that, it'll help me understand and legitimize why I'm taking some of these actions rather than just doing them for the sake of reducing things. So that was my life log update. I hope you liked it. I'm very curious to see yours and how it's going. I'll keep tracking mine for week 2 and week 3 and send you guys an update as well. All right, take care.